What is going on, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome to a very special Let's Ride podcast for the winners and losers after the Steelers were losers 20-12 to the Houston Texans on Friday night at Acrisure Stadium in week 1 of the NFL preseason. And this was a tough game to diagnose. And on Monday, I'm going to dive more into it after I, let it kind of simmer a little. This is pretty much right after the games. Just recorded the post-game show. I encourage everyone to go check that out. Myself and Dave Schofield, we were there doing the winners and or not the winners and losers. We were there doing the post-game show, and we talked all about offense, defense, special teams. But this podcast, though, is specifically for who did well and who didn't do well. These can be individuals. This can be a group. And I decided to do this in a little bit of a different way for the preseason. I always do this, but there are times where if games go really well, think back to 2023, that the preseason game, you could have 10 winners and only one loser. I felt like this game was a little bit more even. There were some good things that happened. There were some definite things that could be improved upon. And so I went with 5 winners and 4 losers. So I went with 5 winners and 4 losers. You might be wondering, Jeff, they lost 20-12. How can you have more winners than losers? Well, you'll get it when you listen. We're going to start with the winners. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll get to the losers in the second half. So here we go. Let's start this off. The winners. I got to be honest. The first winner I have on the list is Montravius Adams. And Montravius Adams got called into action a little bit early. And the reason being is that Keanu Benton left the game with an eye injury. I guess he got poked in the eye. Mike Tomlin said after the game that he thinks he'll be fine. But nonetheless, Montravius Adams played a lot more with the ones than we thought. He got a sack. He had a tackle for loss. He even had a pass defense. So I think that in a game where the Steelers didn't play their starters a ton, you're looking for players that pop on the screen, especially on defense. Players that you're like, whoa, did you see that? Like, who was that? Who made that play? For me, early in this game, it was Montravius Adams. It was Montravius Adams making some run stops. He obviously was doing a good job in his run fits. He got that sack, which is a tackle for loss. He even got his hands on a football. Good for Montravius Adams. This guy has been having a really good training camp. And so a lot of people are like, oh man, this guy's camp has been really, really good. It's different to have a good camp and then to have a good game. You got to be able to put them together. I think Montravius Adams has done that. So good for Montravius Adams. He had a good game, minimal playing time, but still he finds his way on the winners list. Let's go to the next winner. Justin Fields to George Pickens, that connection, the Fields to Pickens connection, that's the next winner. And the reason why Justin Fields is not going to find himself solely on the winners list or the losers list, I felt it was very middle of the road in terms of his performance. Did some good things, did some not so good things. But the one thing we've seen is a consistent and a constant all throughout training camp is the Justin Fields to George Pickens. It seems like every time you're tracking training camp, all you see is, and Fields finds Pickens again. And Fields finds Pickens again. Well, guess what? That connection continued. George Pickens did not play long. He had 2 catches, 2 targets, 25 yards, 12.5-yard average. Didn't score a touchdown, had a 15-yard long. And while the Justin Fields experience is like a roller coaster, it seems like he has this level of comfort with George Pickens, and that's fantastic. If Justin Fields is called into action, having that connection with George Pickens is going to be really, really important. So Justin Fields to Pickens in particular, yeah, that's looking just fine. Let's go to the next winner, Peyton Wilson. I was really surprised. I can almost say that I was shocked. After this game was over and we hit record on the postgame show, I was stunned, actually, when I saw, because I thought Peyton Wilson played a phenomenal game. I have him on the winners list for a reason. The guy finishes with 7 tackles, 5 solo, and a tackle for loss. There were people there saying Peyton Wilson looked lost. This guy's not what we thought he was. Man, I thought it was appropriate that after the game, Mike Tomlin was specifically asked, do you think Peyton Wilson got a little tired in the third quarter, the fourth, like towards the end of the third? And Mike Tomlin's answer was perfect. I think a lot of those guys got tired. Peyton Wilson and all the rookies and really everyone in that camp right now, they're not used to playing this much football. They're used to practicing, having their team sessions. They're used to doing their individual drills with their position coaches, but they're not used to playing the game for this long. It's been a long time for these guys. And so the fact that early in the game, I thought Peyton Wilson popped off the screen. I mentioned that with Montravius Adams. I thought he jumped off the screen. And so I think that that's important to note. I think it's also crazy when you think about, wow, a rookie popped off the screen, especially a linebacker who was playing alongside of Landon Roberts, which is where Patrick Queen's going to be. Eventually, Peyton Wilson won't be, or hopefully won't be called upon to be the every down starter alongside of Landon Roberts, but just comes in with special team or special sub packages, the nickel, the dime. Maybe he's that type of backer. But with his first professional action in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I thought that Wilson had a phenomenal, phenomenal game. Did he make every play that came his way? No, no one did. But I thought that he was noticeable in a positive way on defense. And let's also not forget special teams. He was flying down there like we thought he would, making plays. I think this is just the beginning of a very talented career and a very talented linebacker. All right, so this next guy who finds his way on the winners list, he went back and forth, winner or loser, multiple times. It was a Mason Rudolph-esque game in terms of the winners and losers, because there were times where I put Mason Rudolph on the winners and losers. There were times that I had him on the loser list. Then he goes to the winners list and finds his way back on the loser list. That's Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen finished the game 17 of 23, 193 yards, an 8.4-yard average. He had one touchdown, one interception, was sacked one time for 10 yards for a 95.0 rating. So he had a slow start in the first half. I think what typified that slow start was he had a wide open Calvin Austin III in the corner of the end zone, and he just underthrew it. Or I'm sorry, he overthrew it. He overthrew it in a big way. He could have thrown it to the point where Calvin Austin just stops, turns around, catches the ball, boom, Steelers score. Instead, that was a fourth down play, mind you, and then it turns into a turnover on downs. But he rebounds. He rebounds in the second half, has some really nice big plays. Calvin Austin III is the recipient of one. Scotty Miller is the recipient of the other. And he eventually throws a touchdown pass to Connor Hayward. I thought his veteran experience definitely helped boost the team and the offense and get him moving. And it's just, I hated the fact that the last drive, man, I have him on the winners list. I'm like, okay, the stat line's pretty good. He looks like he's moving the offense down the field. And what does he do? Overthrows a receiver and it gets intercepted. And so there's that blemish on the docket for Kyle Allen. But I thought Kyle Allen, he warmed to the task. He got comfortable in probably the second half. And maybe that was because he's playing against lesser competition, and that could be it too. But Kyle Allen is a veteran quarterback. You want those guys on your team. And I think he has a really good shot at just solidifying the QB3 on the roster. So let's go to the fifth and final winner. And again, you might have said at the beginning of this podcast, how do you have 5 winners and only 4 losers? How do you have more winners than losers? Well, the last winner is what we call teach tape. You don't know what teach tape is, at least that's what I called it. When I was a coach and my team would have a poor performance, I would say to my assistants, well, we got a lot of teach tape this week. And that was because you had a lot of tape that you could go and show the team and say, we need to improve. We're going to teach you all. This is a teaching moment, teachable moments. So think back to last year, 2023. I called it the pristine preseason. Why? They won every game. The offense looked unstoppable. I think at that time, it might be easy for players to just kind of get comfortable. Man, why do we're doing all this stuff? We have a perfect preseason right now, like perfect. But maybe sometimes it's hard to go through the difficulties of struggling a little bit. So last year it was when week 1 rolled around and the 49ers came to town and smacked the Steelers in the mouth. Well, I think the Steelers got an eye-opening, or call it what you want. They got a wake-up call on Friday night by the Houston Texans. And it's not that the Houston Texans blew their doors off. This was not the Houston Texans game in Houston last year, where the Texans literally blew the Steelers' doors off in the regular season. But I think it was enough that the coaches are going to be like, this was sloppy. There was a lot of miscues. This is not how we want to play the game. That it's going to help this team get focused, to improve. And I think that's a win. I think ultimately that can be a win. Now, if the next preseason game, we see the same old issues, same miscues, same sloppy play, well, that's a problem. But for now, the teach tape, that can actually be a winning factor for the Steelers. All right, so we're going to take a really quick break. When we come back after this break, I'm going to dive into losers. We have 4 losers. I didn't want to be too harsh on these guys. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Steelers fans, we're back. Second half of the special winners and losers Let's Ride podcast. It's time to dive into the losers. The winners, we're done with those. We had the Montravius Adams, Fields to Pickens connection, Peyton Wilson, Kyle Allen, and the Teach tape. Those were the winners. Let's do the losers now. The first loser is the quarterback center exchange. And why is that? Because with the starters, that's Nate Herbig and Justin Fields, there were 2 botched snaps. Now, after the game, Nate Herbig openly said, that's 100% on me. Of course, he said it's 100% on him. Nate Herbig is a team-first guy. He will never blame someone else. He will never even leave that as an option. And so he took 100% of the blame covering for the quarterback. Now, I got to be honest. I don't know who was to blame. I don't know who was at fault. It was really difficult to see. So it wasn't like the quarterback backed away from the center, therefore missing the snap. I don't know. I'd have to see it again from a different angle. Nonetheless, these type of miscues, and Mike Tomlin was not happy after this game when talking about these miscues. He said it's just not acceptable. Those 2 plays, those 2 botched snaps really did kill drives and momentum in those drives for the Steelers. And a couple times they were able to erase the loss of yardage or anything like that. They're lucky that they were able to recover both of the fumbles, but still, that's a losing effort. That's why quarterback center exchange is the first loser on the list. The next one, I hate to pile on guys, but Quez Watkins. I mean, my gosh, this guy was with the Eagles for a long time, and he had flashes, but he just never could find a home in terms of a position and everything like that. So the Steelers clearly, they're intrigued by his speed. Let's see what he can do as a punt returner. Now, Quez Watkins did not even get a target in this game as a receiver, so therefore he had no catches. But man, was hit rough with him as a punt returner. As a punt returner, Quez Watkins on the first punt return, he didn't have a defender or probably within 20 yards of him. And he fair caught it. Man, you're trying to make the team, unless the coaching staff, and this could happen. I want to be honest. This could be the case. Unless the coaching staff said, listen, Quez, I want you to fair catch this no matter what. No matter what. We're not interested in the return. We're interested in the offense getting out there and seeing what they can do. If that was the case, fine. But if not, you got to return that punt and try to make a play. But I digress. It gets better. And those that watched the game, you saw where Quez Watkins was fielding a punt that went way further than he thought it was going to. So he was having to not just backpedal, he had to turn and run. So now he looks like a center fielder trying to, like Willie Mays style, catch the ball over his shoulder. Instead of just letting it go, take your medicine, he tries to catch the ball. And he doesn't, but it hits his hands, fumble. The Texans recover. This was right after the Steelers defense got a 3-and-out. The momentum was going their way. And then what happens? Houston ends up scoring, and it's a 2-score lead. Just like that. That's the type of stuff that gets you cut. That is the type of stuff that finds you on the unemployment line. And so I'm sure Quez Watkins will probably get another opportunity, and rightfully so. But man, that was bad. That was bad. Quez Watkins is on the loser list. The next loser, and this was obvious to anyone that watched the game, was tackling from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. And I get it. First preseason game. I just said this before we started the loser list. I'm just trying not to be too harsh on these guys. I do have to remind myself that the Texans had played a preseason game already. They played in the Hall of Fame game against the Bears. That means they reported to camp a week earlier than everyone else except the Bears. They've had more time. But the Steelers, my gosh, tackling. You could tell by Mike Tomlin's tone after the game that there was going to be a reckoning at training camp, and it might be more padded practices, more tackling drills, fundamentals. Look, I'm willing to chalk it up to the first preseason game. But again, don't make this a 2-week thing. Fix it, right the ship, and we'll write it off as just a blip on the radar. Let's go to the last loser, and that is penalties. The Steelers were penalized 6 times for 59 yards. And that doesn't seem like some some huge astronomical amount. It's not. But they were penalized 6 times for 59 yards. Now, when you're penalized 6 times for 59 yards, a lot of times, and those 2 of those penalties, at least, maybe even 3, were on special teams. When it comes to cleaning it up, the Steelers have a lot of work to do. And that's not just in the penalty department. It's in the fundamentals of the game of football. Tackling, knowing how to field punts, when to let them go, all that stuff. Not botching snaps and having the ball all over the ground. These are the things that can't happen. They can't happen if you want to be a good football team. I think the Steelers could be a good football team, but they're going to have to clean it up. This was just the start. This was just the start of the 2024 Steelers, and I understand that a lot of people might be down on the team, but I'm going to finish this podcast the way I finished the post-game show last night, and that is this. Last year, we said we're not going to be fooled again. We drank the Kool-Aid with the offense in the 2023 perfect preseason, the pristine preseason, as I call it. We're not going to drink that Kool-Aid, but you can't, it's got to be a two-way street, meaning that we can't get overhyped if they do well, but we also can't get ready to jump off a bridge if they don't do well. So in this regard, it's important that we as fans try to keep a level head here, realize this is one game. Let's wait and see how week 2 looks before we see, do we have a trend starting? Or, for instance, on defense, is it because TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton left early, Minka Fitzpatrick, those guys weren't in the lineup. Patrick Queen, forgot about that. That's a quality player on every single level of the defense. So let's not overreact. Let's not freak out. We'll be just fine, and we're going to have you covered every which way and sideways at the Steel Curtain Network. For me, I'll be back on Monday talking about this game, what to look ahead to the Buffalo Bills, and what might we see in improvement-wise. We'll have that for you on Monday. Make sure you check out all of our content over the weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you check out steelcurtainnetwork.com. A lot of good written stuff there. Go check it out. steelcurtainnetwork.com. We do appreciate it. In the meantime, folks, you know how we finish this out. Be safe, be kind, and God bless. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Go Steelers.